everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Road to ECS. We are back in a new year. Is it new us or not? Anyway, I think it's the old us. So it's me, Adis, Mustafa, and today with us we have a guest, Marco. You've been with us at the last ECS in person last year in May. For those folks who haven't seen you live on stage there, how about a few words about who you are and what you do?
Well, I'm Marco Casalaina. I am VP Products of Core AI at Microsoft, and I'm also AI Futurist at Microsoft. And concretely, what that means is that I get to be the first person to play with anything new, as I constantly am doing.
That's a really broad and all-encompassing term. And I was almost sitting on the edge of my chair, like, so what do you do exactly? And then you can elaborate, like you're playing. So like my instant thing that I want to ask, to the extent you can say, right? Because it's a public show, no NDAs. What was the last thing you played with?
Sorry, a lot of network issues here, but if you think about what is going to happen next, well, certainly one of the things that's happening and has happened over the last month is a sudden and dramatic improvement in computer usage. And so for those people who were at my keynote at ECS last year, I showed some early versions of computer use agents that could basically use a computer. That's what they do. That's why they call them that. But those things have been pretty limited. And one of the things that I even showed, I think, in the keynote was that date pickers will often mess up your computer use agents, at least until December. And suddenly, here comes the next crop of the underlying models for these computer use agents. And they're much, much better. And so it doesn't get tripped up anymore in the way that it used to. And that gives us some really interesting possibilities. I mean, we'll talk about agent optimization and making all of your properties and things work with agents. And you can do that with MCP and stuff like that. But there are going to be a lot of cases where you just have no control. So for example, inside of Microsoft, there's a set of internal sites where I have no control over this, right? We have our expense management site where I put my receipts and things, and that's like a homegrown thing, and it's not wonderful. We have our travel site, which is semi-homegrown, also not wonderful. And there's really nothing I can do about those. I mean, I can't agent optimize those things myself. I'm not in those groups. I can only do it by influence. And I have been working with our expenses team actually to agentify that. But now I have another option, which is I have these new computer use agents, which can 100% defeat those crappy sites. So that does change the game.
So does that work on any side? Because I can imagine, we're talking about enterprise. And oftentimes when what you see is when you talk with companies who have existed for a longer period of time, is that especially for their own homegrown tools, these things run on anything and everything, and they have seen technology throughout 20 years or more. So do these new agents work literally on everything on the web?
Everything that I've tried so far. So
really?
I'm sure there's going to be some long tail of things that they can't figure out or whatever. There's also something else happening, which is interesting, which is there is the phenomenon of nudging that is starting to show up on the scene here. And I noticed it actually over the weekend. I was using Claude Code a lot. I was, rebuilding the next version of my questionnaire agent, which I often show. And I think I probably did show an earlier version of that at ECS. The version that I have now is much, much more advanced than before. But Claude Code has become nudgeable, interestingly, which is to say that, it used to be that if you type something into Claude Code while it's working, it'll kind of queue it up and then eventually get to it. Now it does queue it up, but only for a moment, and then it takes it into account midstream. And that's also true of Opal, the computer use agent that I'm referring to, which, by the way, is already public, although it's not publicly accessible. But because the Opal team blogged about it, I can speak about it quite openly. Opal is nudgeable. And that's interesting because it did happen once that I was doing something with my expenses that was actually pretty unusual. And even I couldn't quite figure out how to do it. Basically, we have these cost centers in Microsoft, where the expenses get charged to. And I have my standard one. And in this case, it was for Ignite, actually, the Ignite conference. I had to use a different cost center. So I had set up my whole expenses. I submitted the report, and then they sent it back to me saying, no, you used the wrong cost center. And I didn't really know how to fix that, but I set Opal to the task. And I kind of worked with it. So it was interesting because it was using the expense side and I could see it, it was using it. And then I was kind of nudging it. I was like, I don't know, try that button over there. Because like I said, even I didn't know how to do this. I have never done that before. And so together we kind of figured it out. And so basically what you're starting to see now is this nudging concept where you can actually modify the path of what an agent is doing midstream, not just at the end of a turn. And that does really change how you interact with these agents and what kind of output comes out.
What are some of the benefits that being able to nudge midstream as opposed to wait until it's done with its turn offers you or the users?
Well, I mean, consider, for example, just moments ago, actually, I was using one of the computer use agents to make me some travel reservations. Before I go to Cologne, I actually have to go to Dubai. I'm speaking in Dubai. I've never been there before. And I was making some travel reservations. Now, I need to be in Dubai the morning of April 7th. And I didn't, off the top of my head, really know how long it was going to take me to get from San Francisco to Dubai. And I guess the time difference too, right? Plus 10 hours from here, I think. And so anyway, and so I had to nudge it a little bit. So while it was going through there, I saw that it was starting to make the reservation on April 6th. Now, I could have let it go all the way through because April 6th would not get me there on time. If you consider the flight time plus the time zone difference, it wouldn't be there on time. And I could see that straight away. Like, it didn't figure that out at first. It would have figured it out eventually because it would have gotten to the point where it was looking at the flight and it's like, oh, wait a minute, this flight gets in too late. But instead, I just nudged it. I was watching it and I said, nah, actually try one day earlier. And so it stopped what it was doing and it kind of went back to the search and it, started that again with, April 5th. So it basically allowed me to interact with it in a way that you would interact in a way with a person, right? It's kind of like if I was working with somebody and that person was sitting there making my flight reservations, I might nudge them. And you can do other kinds of nudges too. Like, okay, maybe let's see what happens if I stay a day longer. Is it going to be cheaper? Like, are the flights better? Can I get a direct? Those kinds of things. So the nudging thing, because you can kind of alter what it's doing midstream like that, it kind of saves you time and saves agentic effort, for lack of a better term.
That is so cool. Because it's exactly as you say. So it's token saved, but it's also the fact that if you know a little bit how LLM works, right, is that all the tokens that are being used, they end up in the context window. So even if you want to recheck your steps, they aren't gone. They are still there. So you kind of keep adding things to it, which at the end makes it really hard for the LM to understand what is that you exactly want to do, right? So if you can preempt that, that's insane. That's a huge difference. So is that new evolution? Is that something new that is only applicable to these new models you mentioned? Or is that something that we can expect to see across the board, basically in all the models that we already use?
I think you're going to see it globally. And, the nudging thing, it's not exactly a model function. It's more a function of the agent framework that sits above the model. And when you think about these computer use agents, I mean, although there is certainly an underlying model beneath them, it really is the agent framework above it, the CUA framework above it that allows it to do what it's doing. And this is true of, Claude Code too, right? Claude Code, I'm not using it so much as a CUA, but nudgeability is increasingly going to be a feature of, I would say, every general purpose agent, every agent framework. And it's going to become part of our lives, especially, if you look at what is going to happen. And even at ECS last year, I did go into the voice capabilities or the beginnings of it. We kind of explored the voice models and the real-time models. I made them speak a few different languages and that kind of thing. But that's going to become more and more prominent now. Through the course of 2026, voice is going to become much more of a thing. And it will be more and more interactive because today, I mean, if you turn Copilot or ChatGPT in voice mode, it becomes a voice bot. It's nothing but a voice bot. So you talk to it, it talks to you, and nothing else. That's probably not how that's going to go. I mean, in reality, it's going to be more kind of collaborative. You'll be talking to it, and so I can nudge it instead with my voice. Now, right now, at least Opal that I'm using right now doesn't have a voice function yet. It probably almost definitely will. And then I will nudge it with my voice while it's working, while it's doing something. And so you'll see more and more what I'll call voice enabled AI applications, not just a voice bot, not just a chat bot. So that's going to be a thing, I think, through the course of 2026.
There,
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you here, but I think this is definitely you are definitely here spot on, because we are as a company using a lot of Mistral's model for our internal development. They're beautiful in AI Foundry, short siding. What I have noticed with DevStral, and DevStral coding tools, which is basically kind of compared to Cloud Code, is they already work nicely with VoiceStral, which is Mistral's voice model. So you can kind of not out of the box, not as you have described it, Marco, but if you put a little development and coordination, orchestration efforts around it, you can actually already do this. You need to put some of your own work, but it is already kind of there.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that we are working on actually is voice with AI right now is a little bit strange because it forces these turns. That is to say that, like, when you use voice in whatever tool you were just discussing, and I don't think I'm familiar with it, but just in the last couple of days, I've used voice both in GitHub Copilot and in Warp. I'm a big fan of Warp. And I was using Warp's voice mode, but it's very transactional. That is to say, I press the little microphone button, I say something, it transcribes it. Now it's on the command line and it goes. Warp is a command line AI, which is super handy for doing stuff like administering Azure, right? Warp is great for that. You can say to Warp, like, give Otis whatever permissions he needs to access admin sites.
Don't. It's like, no.
Warp is like, not Otis, man. Come on.
No,
Everyone but.
But it's very transactional, but that's not really what I want it to be. Really, what I want it to be is actually more like this discussion that we're having here. I want it to be always on and effectively kind of multi-threaded in the sense that, like, Otis, I can be talking to you and you could be doing something else at the same time. Of like what we're talking about, you could be doing this thing. Kind of like when you think about pair programming. Back in the day, 20 years ago, me and a guy named Matt Ho, we were pretty dedicated pair programmers. So me and Matt, we would literally have 2 keyboards, 2 mice connected to the same computer, and we would be programming like this all day long for like 8 hours. I mean, it was exhausting, but between the two of us, we were ridiculously productive. I mean, we did things in a day that would take one developer 3 weeks, partly because Matt Ho himself is an excellent developer, but partly just because we were playing off each other and we would catch each other's errors on the fly and be like, oh, no. Like that could throw a null pointer exception or whatever. And that's how I want it to be. I don't want it to be transactional. I want it to be nudge style, where I'm kind of having this continuous conversation with my coding agent in this case. And I could just talk to it and be like, yeah, maybe that's not the way to go with that. Like, let's see if we could try a different direction. And this is effectively what I was doing with Claude Code all weekend, except with text. So it doesn't really have a voice function. And so I was just typing to it, nudging it in the direction that I wanted it to go. But it would have been more fluid if it were a voice conversation. Now, the challenge with that is that right now, the way that the voice models work, and this is pretty much all of them, is that they are all kind of single threaded. So it's like, it's made for you're talking and then it's talking, and then you're talking and then it's talking, and then it does something. Then it does a tool call and then it does something. What we want to get to is kind of a dual threaded voice conversation where the voice is sitting in a layer above and the tool calls are kind of asynchronous. And so it can, like Otis presumably can, talk and do something else at the same time, walk and chew gum at the same time. I'm pretty sure I've seen you do that before, Otis.
I can do that.
But I guess, so that brings me to an interesting point, because the other day I read about, like, there were quite a few folks on X, and I think one of them was the developer who built Cloud Code CLI, and he shared the workflow that he uses at work. And the way he codes is that he will start 4 CLIs in parallel, each with its own task.
My friend, but that I respect the guy. Did you try what he did?
For what?
Did you try what his recipe does?
I literally ran a few instances of VS Code, GitHub Copilot shit running in
How,
parallel,
how
and that
soon
worked.
how soon did you get stayed out of tokens?
Oh,
Not
And I need
well.
to tell you, I've got the highest subscription of Cloud Code Max.
Anyhow, Marco,
not me,
going to your
because
point, right?
I
So
connected my Claude Code to Claude on Azure, and I have unlimited tokens. Now, yes,
Okay, okay,
I ran up
okay.
a bit of a
Now
bill this
it works.
weekend,
anyhow,
but I
right?
did not run out of tokens. Yes, I also had, I also would run out of tokens constantly with Claude Code, like every day. And now I have unlimited tokens because I get unlimited Azure.
But yes,
Anyhow,
it's a very interesting concept that he was that he was describing, Baldek. This is true.
going back to my original point, I'll really try to make my point. So, say we are in this world where you start 4 of these things. How would that, Marco, do you think, look like with this multi-threaded speech? How would you nudge them if you kind of observe 4, or you have to observe 4 or participate in 4 threads same time? How would that
Yeah.
work, you think?
I mean, that's interesting. And I guess we're going to kind of see. I mean, the way that I was spawning multi-agents with Claude Code this weekend, well, I used the built-in function of Claude Code, which has upsides and downsides. I mean, the upside is, well, it spawns the agents itself, these kind of background processes that it does. And they are kind of centrally nudgeable because there's sort of the central orchestrator that's in the middle of it. And that's what I'm watching. The downside is that, yeah, the visibility is lacking here. Now, Scott Hanselman actually last week worked up some kind of a console that he could like watch them all go at the same time. I haven't really gotten into that too much. He showed it to me last week and I was like, damn, dude, okay. But yeah, I mean, when you have multi-agents, like the multi-agent observability story for Claude Code is not great at the moment. For GitHub Copilot is a little bit better. I mean, if you are using VS Code Insiders, you'll see that it has that kind of multi-agent monitor console now that shows up in there. Still not perfect, but at least you can see them all working. But your question is still valid, which is, how do I choose what to look at, what to nudge, and that sort of thing? And there's only so many cases where you really do spawn these sub-agents. I mean, in reality, like when I often spawn them is when I'm making it do automated testing. Actually, right. I'm like, you know what, spawn like 6 of these things and have them each run different tests. And some of these tests are codified. They're literally unit tests that are checked into the thing. And some of them are ad hoc, for whatever issue I'm having it fix. And so, especially for the ad hoc ones, I mean, I want them to do that in parallel, like it can. So do it, And so I don't need to nudge it that much. I don't usually nudge an automated test very much.
Let's nudge the ECS topic a bit. My dear friend Lee Stott.
Nudge the ECS topic.
Yeah, my dear friend Lee Stott, whom we all know very well. Few weeks ago in this very podcast, I asked Lee, so what did you like the most about ECS? And he was like, totally straight, the registration process. It is so fast. You come there with the QR code and you get the badge. Marco, I hope that's not what you like the most about TCS. I hope you like few other.
I hope there's something else.
Yes.
Well, I mean, certainly I enjoyed certainly it's a large event. I mean, what is it? 3,000 some people, I think, that show up for this thing. It's a pretty diverse event. I mean, you see people from really all over Europe at this event. And that's kind of interesting because, I visit a lot of European countries. Roughly once a month, I find myself in Europe. But when I'm there, when I'm in Netherlands, I'm meeting with Dutch customers. When I'm in Germany, I'm meeting with German customers and so on. Relatively rarely am I at an event where there's this kind of whole bunch of folks from all over Europe. And there's a lot of similarity between different people from different countries and what their concerns are, where they're at. But there are also some major differences that you find, especially when everybody's in the same room. And so I personally find that to be pretty interesting, to be able to do this kind of comparative study of where people are at, what they're thinking, what they care about, what they're concerned about.
That is really important, especially because, and I am German and I live in Germany, and I can say it not proudly, but I can say that Germans are sometimes very reluctant accepting the new tech. They are more conservative than Dutch. I mean, I think Valdek, I think you and me are going to agree with that. Even if we are neighboring
Dutch aren't
countries, and
conservative at all.
yeah, and
Like the
Germans,
opposite.
Germans are actually in that
Yep.
regard. And I think Mustafa can confirm on this one because we had few conversations with our attendees the last year, and they said, "Yeah, this is awesome. One of the best contents or the best contents we ever had." However, there is so much AI that almost every second or 2/3 of the sessions are the AI. Do we need to have so much AI? I honestly envision for this year this to be a non-question. So much has changed between my last year and now, and especially as we mentioned in preparation for this conversation with Marco said, what is all going to happen even in the next 4 months?
Mhm.
That I think this basic question, is AI just another hype like we had blockchain, like we had metaverse, like we had name all of those? I think the realization is settling that it is not. It's a fundamental change how we are going to do things in the future. I mean, I was talking to our developers a lot in the past few days. I'm not sure that within 1 year we will be doing. We will still be doing development. Don't get me wrong, and but we are going to be doing it in an entirely different way that we are doing it even now. And even now we are changing it a lot.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's funny because if you think back, and this is, I could say, my fourth bubble. So I've been in Silicon Valley the whole time, my entire adult life. I've been here in Silicon Valley. I am coming to you, by the way, from Oakland, California, which is kind of the furthest extent of Silicon Valley, but it does extend here. Lots of Silicon Valley friends live all around me. All my neighbors are like tech people. Um, and I mean, imagine if you were doing this conference in 1998. And people would be like, does everything have to be about the web? That's exactly what they would have said. And you know that in 2000, in April of 2000, I was at a dot-com boom company and everything crashed. The whole bubble crashed. But the web survived. Everything is web-based now. Everything is internet-based now. I mean, now maybe you access it via your mobile phone, not necessarily just websites and stuff like that, but those core technologies survived. So there was a bubble, and yet it persisted. And that's going to be true of this too. I mean, certainly there are some bubbly aspects to the private market valuations of a lot of these companies and stuff like that. Certainly, no doubt about it. And you see some weird blips on the market with the GPU vendors that really have no intellectual property at all. They're like, well, we have GPUs, I don't know if that's a sustainable business, but what will stay is the way that, I mean, the fact is the agents are going to become our portal to the world in the way that the web became our portal to the world in the late 90s and the early 2000s. And that's going to change how we do things, how we make travel, how we shop for things. It's going to change lots of stuff. Even in the last couple of days, if you've been paying attention to the news, a couple of new commerce protocols have shown up on the scene. So that is Google's UCP, ChatGPT apps, stuff like that. At the moment, they're kind of fractionated. And so, it's not clear what's going to become a standard. And I can't wholeheartedly recommend to one of my customers, you should go make a ChatGPT app, or you should support UCP, because these things are brand new. But this is going to be a thing. A year from now, when I go to order AAA batteries, I'll probably just tell my phone, like, order me some AAA batteries.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll just do it. Does it get it from Amazon or Walmart or Target? I don't care. Does it get Duracell or Energizer? I also don't care. I just want the batteries. As long as they don't explode and the price is good, give me some batteries. And that's what's going to happen.
Question.
It's kind of hard to imagine going backwards in any, like, we are so used to now using all those tools, and I completely agree with Marco. May they evolve, like, are things going to shift? More certainly. Like, we don't even know what's going to happen in May, right? But going back to the old way of doing things, I think that's impossible. And what Aris mentioned about the content, like, people did say a lot about last year ECS, like, is it all It doesn't have to be so much AI. Or wait for them to see the content this year. I don't think there's a single session not mentioning AI in some context or another, because it might not be AI focused, but it's still like, because it's all present everywhere. Like when we are talk about big chunk of the content is around security, but nowadays it's impossible to talk about security without looking from the AI aspect of it, like how it's influencing it, like what are the threats. Threats are also shaped by AI and so on. So it's kind of like everything is touched by AI some way.
And
Right.
we have a lot of development content. We just mentioned, I mean, a guy who's a buddy of mine from Microsoft. You probably know the name, at least, if not him, Clemens Vasters, the guy who is kind of the legend around messaging and queuing Microsoft. Clemens wrote a very interesting thing on LinkedIn the other day. Hey, founders, your biggest competition isn't another founder. It's a 50 years old guy who grew up with 8-bit computers in 80s. And he is right. He is so much right. But it does tell us a few other things. It's the developer job, and we have a lot of developer audience. Developer job is going to change. It's not going to go away. I don't think it's going away. No. Because in order to make good software, you need to know what you are doing. Yeah. However, this friction of learning every single new framework, every single new pattern, that's gone. And probably in few years, I was discussing with our also common friend Damir Dobric a few days ago. The question is if we are going to have programming languages as we know them today, right, in 3 or 4 years. What's the purpose of the programming languages as such? However, you will still need to know how to create software. What's important for the software, what's important for the architecture. But the role of the developers will be more moving from coders to understanders and orchestrators, if I may say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I consider what I've been doing this weekend. As I mentioned, I spent a lot of this weekend working on this project because I have this side project in which I am automating part of my own job. You know, my questionnaire agent for analysts, questionnaires, RFPs, things like that. And it's become increasingly robust. Now, in this version, I can feed it an entire spreadsheet, and most of the time it will just fill out the whole thing. And I don't really even have to edit anything anymore now. Like as I have been improving it, it gets better and better. And it's got this whole maker checker pattern in it. And so it kind of goes back and forth and fixes itself before I even go to edit it. It has lots of these kinds of things. And I'm making it better and better in the presence of more and more complicated kinds of questionnaires and structures and that sort of thing. So I was making a bunch of improvements to it over the weekend. And what did I do? I was really doing what we call PRD first development, or structured vibe coding, because I wasn't just vibe coding it. I actually spent a whole bunch of time writing a big PRD, and I used SpecKit for it. If you haven't used SpecKit, it's freaking great for that. You know,
spec-driven development.
Spec-driven development, but specifically SpecKit, which is an open source tool that's available on GitHub, helps you write it because it lobs questions at you. So, you know, you start speccing the thing out, and then it starts lobbing things at you that you didn't think of, where it'll be like, so what do you want me to do if the file is password protected? What do you want me to do? You know, all these different kinds of things that you kind of have to answer that clarify what your spec is, that clarify kind of the edge cases. So it tries to think those through. But this is key, is that really, I mean, to your point, do coding languages exist in the future? I mean, I guess they probably do, I think. But you could look at them in a sense as a sort of a bytecode. Like in the same way that, like, you know, if you're writing Java or Python, it gets translated to bytecode, and then that's what gets run. That intermediate thing is what gets run. So you could look at it as the spec is the code, actually. And whatever gets generated from that is the bytecode. I mean, you probably have never explored the actual Java bytecode that the Java VM runs.
Every day at 3 p.m.
A little bit. I mean, I don't know how to read it, but anyway, yeah. I mean, you look at Java, you don't look at Java bytecode or C#, not .NET bytecode. Here too, you know, I mean, I wrote this whole thing, you know, thousands of lines of code I wrote over the weekend. I didn't really look at the code very much. I was mostly working with the spec.
But then again, you are developer in your core and you know how to write that spec. You know what needs to come into the spec. That's back to Clement's point of 50 years old guy who grew up in the 80s with the 8-bit computers.
Sure. But I mean, this is why I use SpecKit also, because SpecKit will kind of put you in this box where it will make you write a spec that is amenable to consumption by AI, and it'll format it all out with user stories. I will probably show this at ECS, in my keynote coming up, or whatever the version is by May. And I do hope that by May it'll be better integrated. It's actually reasonably well integrated into GitHub Copilot, but I would like to see it better integrated into VS Code in a larger sense. Because, I mean, planning is the new execution. That's the thing. Execution is cheap. I give this gigantic spec to Claude Code, and it goes and noodles on it for 17 minutes, and I go get myself a cup of coffee. And I come back, and it's done. I'll nudge it a little bit, and it'll do what I want it to do. So execution becomes cheap, and what you want it to do then is execute correctly, and that means planning. So, yes. And there's a number of different aspects of that. I mean, there's the upfront planning aspect to it. There's kind of the rules architecture that you have to give it. This is one thing, by the way, that Warp does a really good job of. You can it has a global rules section, and you can give it these rules that say, whenever I say this, do this. Or like one of the rules I give to Warp. Yeah, I don't use Warp as much as a coding agent, but sometimes I do because it can do that. Like never check in my .env file, like, the environment file where you put keys and stuff like that. Like all my coding agents, I'm like, don't check that in, stupid, right? But this is a global rule that I never, ever want them to do, right? That should always be in the git ignore and nothing else. So rules is the key. And now, everybody's coalesced on this agents.md. So there used to be Claude.md and Copilot instructions.md, and everybody's got their own MD. More and more, everybody's kind of coalescing on agents.md as a global agent, with the recognition that, even I myself, I've mentioned 3 different coding agents that I use literally on the same code base, right? I'll use Claude Code, Warp, and VS Code / GitHub Copilot, depending on what I'm doing and, the situation. So I want them to be able to use the same instructions there. So that's part of it also. And yeah, the separating out the planning loop from the execution. I turned Claude Code in Opus Plan mode. I don't know if you know how it has an Opus Plan mode where it uses Opus for planning, but Sonnet for execution.
For execution, yeah.
And that's clever. That's cool.
Clever. I don't know if you have noticed, I don't know if it's with the other models as well. As I said, we are using in our product, we are using a lot of Mistral. And Mistral has announced new pricing, which is really awesome in December. For the first time, I've seen AI company charging more for input tokens than for output tokens.
Oh, yeah, usually it's the other way.
Usually it's the other way around.
Actually, that's exactly not that uncommon.
Marco. Planning is actually more work.
Yeah.
They're really, for the first time, I've seen somebody charging more for the input tokens. I'm like, okay, interesting.
I think that GPT Real-Time is like that also. For the audio model, also charges more for input tokens than output tokens, so it's not unheard of. Yeah, well, it also represents the depth of processing. It's not just the planning; it's also the tokenization on the inbound, right? So basically, it has to do that tokenization and before it goes and puts it into the model. Whereas on outbound, I guess it just has to do decoding.
God, we geeked out in this webinar.
Yeah, we're getting down in there now.
Totally geeked out. But it's not only going to be geeking out in Cologne. We will have a lot of sessions, a lot of different aspects for it. Mustafa mentioned security. Security today without AI is basically, and who would say so even a year ago? Really, even a year ago, who would even think that security today without AI is like, don't even start doing that because you are losing in the beginning, in the start.
When I look at it from a content perspective, as a content owner for ECS, in 23 there was maybe 1 or 2 sessions on AI, right? Like 24 there was a glimpse of it, but not that much. 25 was a boom. Like 25, it was all over. Like 2/3 of the sessions were around AI. This year, I think there's not a single session that doesn't involve AI in some way or another. Maybe not pure AI sessions, but they are everything is touched by AI, right? So
from different perspectives. We cannot neglect the M365 perspective, which is a big one. I mean, Waldek, it's your team trying to bring those perspectives around the Microsoft side around that. We will have also Adam Harmets joining us this year, which is an awesome thing to tell us what everything is the Microsoft 365 group doing around Copilot, and how does AI influence work not only of developers and what we are talking about now, but also of the people doing their day work with technologies like Microsoft 365, like Power Platform, like whatever, Fabric. I mean, AI in Fabric is the big thing right now, what is going on. So we will have lot of conversation about that. But of course, when we speak about AI and Cloud Summit, which are the core topics, definitely we'll have a lot about software crafting. We'll have a lot about development. We'll have a lot of security, and we will have a lot of Azure and how does all that work with the Foundry and with the new agents framework in the AI. And it's really, even for me who has this as a job, it's sometimes really difficult to follow what everything is Microsoft announcing, especially around Ignite and Build. It's like it's a race with the time just to pick on the new names.
Yeah, I mean, even for me, and I work here. I mean, I have a challenge with that. But one of the stories that I think is going to emerge now, certainly with M365, the story number one is the rise of the general purpose agents, and that is M365 Copilot is one of them. Claude, of course, is another one. ChatGPT is another one. They're increasing ability to do what you need to do. I mean, as I mentioned, I'm writing this questionnaire agent, and it's pretty good at answering these questionnaires. I've been using various iterations of it over the last year and a half, and it automates a good part of my job. But every time I do this, and in fact, I'm going to do it again when I finish what I'm working on right now, is if I just give this questionnaire directly to Opus 4.5, and I consider Opus 4.5 to be the best at this right now, does it do it right? And if I use that as a baseline, and I have done this with Copilot as well, so I'll give it a Copilot in GPT-5 mode, now GPT-5.1 or 5.2. Does it do it right? Do I even need to write something to do this? Or will the general purpose agent be able to do it for me? But the other piece of it is delegation. So increasingly, we're going to see delegation. One of the things that we launched at Ignite are the IQs: Foundry IQ, Fabric IQ, Work IQ. So there are 3 IQs, which the marketing team kind of came up with at the last minute. So we all had to scramble. Like in the last week before Ignite, everybody's like, "Oh, we're changing the names to IQ." But
unheard of Microsoft. Unheard of Microsoft. Sorry, Mama.
It happens everywhere. It happens everywhere. But there is a common thread between the IQs. It was a little bit accidental, but each one of the IQs represents a form of delegation. You think about, so back in 2024, at the end of 2024, I was at Ignite in Chicago, and it was the second to last day of Ignite, and my laptop died. And so I had a dead laptop. That wasn't great. Now, there are things that I know how to do as part of my job, obviously development and things like that. But one of the things I definitely do not know how to do is literally order a new laptop from whoever our supplier is. I don't even know who our supplier is. Now, I do know how to go make a ServiceNow ticket, which is what I had to do. I had to go make a ServiceNow ticket to go request a new laptop. And by the time I got home, there was a laptop. They FedExed it to me. It was sitting at my doorstep. But I don't know how to make that order. I delegated that task. I made the ServiceNow ticket, and somebody somewhere picked that up, knows how to do that task, and did it. Now we're going to see the same thing apply to agents, because whether it's a general purpose agent or an agent that you're building yourself, it can't keep everything in its head. It has a fixed context window, same as I do, right? I also can't keep everything in my head. I don't think I want to know how to order a laptop from our supplier. So what these IQs represent is this delegation. Foundry IQ for unstructured data, Fabric IQ for structured data, Work IQ for data that's in the graph or SharePoint, those kinds of things. But all of them represent other agents, because all 3 of the IQs are, in fact, another agent to which your agent is delegating. And so if my agent needs to go get data from the data warehouse, What I don't want to do is clutter up my agent's context window with the data dictionary and the instructions and the example queries and all this crap that you need to put in there to make it successfully query a structured data store. No, instead, I want to put that all in the Fabric data agent in Fabric IQ. And I want my agent to just call that one and say, if you need data, call that, use natural language. You don't need to know the scheme and all that stuff. It'll figure it out and it'll spit it back at you. That's delegation. And that becomes increasingly important now as these agents start to do more and more complicated jobs.
Wow, it's going to be interesting time for us. One last question from my side, Marco. One thing, and I had this discussion with, I think, with Vesa, and Vesa was like, I noticed your face got a bit more red than usually with me. But a lot of people didn't know that our connection, our cable between two main rooms in the ECS 2025 was working the evening before. Somebody did a full reset, then it wasn't working again, and it wasn't working until 5 minutes before my opening, Martina's and my opening in Marco's keynote. Imagine my emotional state standing on that stage, not knowing are we starting in time and how are we starting. And then I look at Marco, pure calmness. He knows what's going on, no face expression change, everything is fine. How do you do that?
I do have a calm disposition, and because I do stage events a lot of times, there's always some last minute issue, and I usually come prepared for everything. You know, I was doing a keynote a few months ago in Nairobi, and oh my God, those people were a mess. Fortunately, so they didn't even know, like we had our little confidence monitor. You know, some people before me needed to do slides. I don't really do slides, but they needed to do slides. They wanted their notes on the screen, and this is fairly standard conference fare. And these folks in Nairobi could not figure out how to do this. But fortunately, I have 2 different HDMI adapters. My laptop supports 3 screens. And I was like, I will do it 5 minutes before the session actually began.
Yeah.
You know, so that kind of thing happens to me a lot. And I'm always able to work through it, I guess. And I always have been able to work through it. So I guess it's a combination of just, yes, I do kind of have a calm demeanor, but also a lot of experience with this kind of thing, where it just doesn't bother me anymore.
We had to split the keynote in Düsseldorf because the main keynote room takes only 1,400 people, and we could not fit, and that's the reason why we did the splitting. I promise you, for Cologne, the main keynote room can take all of us, so we will have the room for 3,000 people, and we will not be forced to do this back and forth as we had if you remember, in Düsseldorf. I'm totally
to make it worth their while. That's for sure. You know, I mean, like I said, it's hard to predict. Even for me, it's hard to predict where we're going to be in May. Although a lot of these things that we've been talking about here, they certainly will still apply in May. This is none of these things of the planning stuff and the idea of delegation. These things will still be true, but we'll have new tools at our disposal 4 months from now that may not exist today.
I'm really happy to call my friends and to work closely with Microsoft Cloud Advocates, both on AI side, with the team that Lee's running, with Valdek's team on Microsoft 365 side. You guys are doing you are doing an awesome job, and with what Daniel Laskevich and April Dunham's team is doing on the Power Platform side, and the stuff that I see you guys are doing around this is actually awesome. I want to see all those sessions that are coming.
Unfortunately, you will see none.
Yes, unfortunately I'm going to see none. I will share a glass or 2 or fine with you guys in the evenings. That's fine, but probably we are going to see none of those sessions later.
But just running around trying to fix things on the fly.
As long as people are happy, we are good.
Yes, that's why we did it.
Marco, thank you a lot, and I'm looking forward to sharing a glass of beverage with you in May. And Valdek, Mustafa, thank you for another awesome episode. And
we will be back.
We will definitely be back
on the road to ECS.
On the road to ECS, and we will be back together in latest in Cologne. And thank you everybody for taking their time to listen to us, to watch us, and see you all in Cologne.
See
See you, folks.
Go on.
See you.